this workshop where I'm going to be sharing with you guys the insides and outsides of what I learned from, going to spend some time with Hormozi and his team in Vegas in their headquarters. I answer any question you guys have, but I was really interested about what they were doing over there, and I asked a lot of questions to people that I knew that went. Ultimately, I made the decision to go. So I wanted to share the top three lessons. And the reason why I said top three lessons is because I can, uh, oh, hold on. I got to make Maria co-host. Sorry. Give me a second. Hi, Sol and Brenda and Ian. Everyone's all right. So let me restart. Welcome, everyone. Today's workshop, we're going to talk about the top three lessons that I learned from paying Alex and acquisition.com over $40,000 to work with them, and things that are applicable to you as well. I want you guys to feel free to ask any questions that you guys have. I want this to, you know, to be valuable to you in that sense as well. Okay, so let me go ahead and share a presentation. All right, I decided to make this presentation a little bit different than the presentations that I did before. I actually did a presentation to for my team earlier or last Friday, and it was in the vibe of a cartoon, and I think it went really well. So I'm going to double down onto this type style presentation because I think I got my point across really well. So top three lessons from paying Alex Hormozi $40,000. Before we get started, you're probably wondering, why did I even pay Alex that much money? And the reality is, it was a really hard decision in a sense, but at the same time, it was also one of the easiest decisions that I've ever made. And I'll explain to you guys what that is as we go through this presentation. What's really hard for me is that just a little quick backstory without getting too much into my backstory. I left corporate, so I had a six-figure job working at PepsiCo as a key account manager. I was managing the relationship of Frito-Lay for CVS, Target, and Walgreens for the southeastern United States. Over $100 million of sales, $100 million of sales a year, overseeing over 15,000 stores. A lot of them are CVS and Walgreens. And I had a really good career. I got promoted 3 times in 6 years. I was in a high, but ultimately decided that I really wanted to build a career coaching business, and I wanted to be a public speaker. And so I left PepsiCo without a clear plan on how to monetize my skill sets. My plan was to go be a speaker and go speak at universities and help people how to get jobs. For the first 2 years of my business, I decided to not work with a coach. I decided just to do this by myself, and I made less in those 2 years than $40,000 in total, right? In fact, I actually went through my savings and went through my 401k so I can continue to maintain my lifestyle, right? And so looking back at it, it's crazy to think that I am now in the position to go and put $40,000. And by the way, Hormozi doesn't do payment plans if you wanted to know that. It's just like, here it is, right? Um, and so it's crazy how much I have grown mentally and also financially in a sense to be able to do that. And so I did it. And I think that the answer to this question will be answered in this presentation because it's actually some of the biggest lessons that I learned is on that. Um, so lesson number one is, unless you're doing over $3 million in profit, or what he calls EBITDA, right? Or EBITDA, if you're diving into the business world, uh, don't reinvent the wheel. And then you hear, I put Layla there as well because Layla is the one that's an executor. In fact, Alex is just the face of it, but really what makes a business work is Layla. And if you are any familiar with Opni, it's very similar. Salo is the one that makes Opni work, right? I am just, I don't even say the pretty face. I'm just the ugly face in front of it, right? And then there's Salo. Um, and what's really, what's it, what happened, Ellie? Oh,
I'm just laughing at what you
oh,
said. That's funny.
it is true. So, and I think what's interesting here, and I make this in a cartoonish because I don't want this to be full of information. I want this to be really conversational. And these are the biggest lessons I took away. They've said a million things. I have notebooks like I have notebooks that they give me with stuff. But these are the three main things that I think will actually be the most helpful to all of you because those are like mindset shifts that I needed to go through as I grew my business, as I grew into the entrepreneurship world. Now that I am going into, I left May 5th, 2018 was when I left my corporate job. I'm about to go to 7 years of full-time entrepreneurship. Is I thought that I needed to be unique and different, and I thought that I needed to sell a product or a solution that no one else had. And I thought that the more unique I was, and the more like I used to like when people were like, "Who's your competition?" I used to be so proud that I was so unique that I had no competition. But the reality is like you want competition because it just validates that there's actually a market out there for it, right? And what's really interesting is that I used to think that you should just emulate or copy and paste. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. I used to think that that number was much, much higher, and I'd be like, "Hey, it's like $1 million." And like if you were to like look at how my teaching on YouTube, like, "Hey, like for the first $85,000 a month, don't reinvent the wheel." But according to them, is actually $3 million in profit. That and until then, it's all about just saying, here's what's working. Because at this point, like I even think about it where Opni is today, right? Like at the end of the day, we're still very, 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 very small in the grand scheme of business. And I don't have the resources to compete with bigger companies to innovate that are spending a lot of time or to even hire the C-level executives that can come in and say, "Hey, I've taken the companies that are doing 7 figures and I've taken them to 8 figures." So like those people cost a lot of money. Like the smarter the people are and the more experienced they are, the more that they're willing, not willing, the more that they're able to charge for that. And they should, absolutely should. So I think a lot about that. And to say is, it's not about getting cute. It's not about reinventing the wheel. It's like, hey, what's working out there? Just do that. And then as your business gets bigger and better, then you're able to innovate. And so I thought a lot about that because this is like the dilemma that I've gone through. And I don't know if you guys, and by the way, if you can relate to anything that I'm saying, like if you've also thought about this in your head, like share it because I mean, it maybe validates that I'm not I'm not the only one thinking about this stuff like this, right? And I said, okay, if I just go and copy everything word for word that someone is doing, one, it feels wrong, but two, then what makes me different, right? What makes me different? And I thought a lot about this. This 80-10-10 rule is actually not a Hormozi thing. It's something that I've thought about so much. And it's simply because I had a client literally happened to be during the time, like right before, this is like on Monday or Tuesday of 2 weeks ago before I went to the actual 2 day workshops with Hormozi. It was my traveling day. And it was one of my clients, and he messaged me on the Slack community. I'm not gonna say names, but like he messaged me essentially saying that it's very concerned because one, there was another person in my program that had a program that was very similar to him or like it's very similar to him, and it's like, what makes my program any different then? So I jump on a call, crisis control, and I'm like, hey, like I want to hear this person out. And guys, I take you back because I am literally like walking around the Vegas Strip, and I'm thinking about this. Like, it's like, man, I've now worked with about 40 clients. Over like I just had a team meeting. It's like 98% of the clients that we worked with has built a multiple six-figure business, or they're like on the track to do it if they've been with us for more than 6 9 months, right? Like what would make them different? And this is the conclusion that I came up with, right? And I would love to you guys' thoughts. When I think about career coaching, 80% is the same. Is the tried and true strategies of what is the same. You like, I'm sorry, you still need to have your clients have a resume. I am sorry, you're gonna teach them how to interview. Like, I have never heard anybody that just got a job without interviewing. Like, in this world, you still need to interview. And I'm sorry, you should be telling your clients how to salary negotiate. If not, they're leaving money on the table, right? They should be using LinkedIn. They should like now. Those are the tried and true strategies. It doesn't matter if they're hearing it from me, they're hearing it from Laura, that's like shaking her head, from Ellie, from Scott. Those are the tried and true. And you should include that. And same thing, should you have office or in the mechanism of how you deliver that? Should you do office hours? Yes. Should you do some one-on-ones or hybrid? Yes. Like, should you have a community for your people to meet with each other? Absolutely. If not, you're actually honestly doing a disservice to your clients. So then what makes everybody different? And this is where I actually came to that conclusion. 80% the tried and true, copy and paste, do what's working, don't reinvent the wheel. 10% is you, your personal brand, your background, your experience, you being authentic, me doing little cartoon things like this, right? Like if you're more of a serious individual, you copying and paste this presentation in a cartoon will come off as unauthentic and or not authentic, and it just wouldn't make sense. Fair? So what's you? What's that look like for you? If you look at Alex Hormozi's books, he does stick figures. That's him, right? That's him, stick figures. And then the other, so be authentically you, your background, your experience, your story, you as a human, that will, people will gravitate towards you and your story and they'll resonate, they'll connect with you. The other 10% is your niche. The way that Scott designs a program for salespeople is very different than Ellie for IO psychology. It's very different than from Sylvia, who's helping people in Dubai. And so that niche makes the programs makes them different. And what's interesting is that it always goes back to the 80-20 rule. Is the Polaro principle of that 20% is 80% of the difference. And so yes, you need the tried and true things that work, but is that secret recipe, right? That the little ingredient, and I was like thinking about it, it's like the baking soda when you're baking, it's like baking soda is like a little spoon, but if you don't have the baking soda, it doesn't work. The recipe doesn't work. Right? So that's ultimately what I thought a lot about. It's like, yes, like if you're doing less than $3 million in profit, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like if LinkedIn works for most career coaches, you can just use LinkedIn, right? Like if that content is going viral and that's helping you get top of funnel, you can create that type of content, be 80% the same, add your personality, add your niche, and it's gonna work. You don't need to reinvent the wheel and say that we need to create this new type of format on LinkedIn and the algorithm is not rewarding it, as an example. So this is how I think about how I have changed because of that lesson, right? I stopped trying to reinvent the wheel 100%. Like, hey, like this is what business consulting is like. 80% of business consulting, of business coaching is the same. What makes Opni different is one, I'm a career coach, been a career coach, been there, done that. And two, and it's authentically me. And two is the niche of career coaching. I'm doing business coaching or business consulting for the career coaching industry. So I'm able to do things that are more relevant for career coaches where other business coaches, other business consultants won't apply to. It wouldn't make sense for them to do. Right? I'm doubling down on my personal brand and what authentically makes me me, aka this presentation, right? And then double down on our niche, career coaches. That's a differentiator for me, right? And I say that to you because I'm giving you an example of how I am changing because of those lessons. Because if not, if I didn't change my behavior, then I actually didn't learn. And so I'm showing you how it applies to my business as well. Now, before I go to the second lesson, how many of you have met people, other career coaches, other business owners, and their business is 2, 4, 10x more or bigger than yours? And you're like, how? Like, they're not smarter. They're not that more special than I am. Why is that? Has anybody ever felt that? Like, I meet people all the time, like, how the heck does this guy have a $5 million business? Like, he's not even that bright. Like, right? Um, so this is like I'm obviously leading up to the next one. So is Nadal, Ian, and I the only ones who's ever felt that? Like, come on, be honest with yourself. Like, or every single time you've met somebody smart, you're like, yep, like they are just brilliant. They were gifted. They were. Uh, it's not about judging, but it's like, hey, like I guess I Todd, for me, it's more like if they did it, why can't I? Like the way I look at it is like it's not like it's nothing personal towards them. It is just more like if they're doing that, why not me? Like, like, like they're not that much smarter than I am. It means if they did it, I could do it too. Nothing against them. I never want to tear anybody down. If anything, I am a builder, not somebody that tears. I don't want to tear the building taller than me just so I could be the tallest building. I'd much rather build myself up so I could be the tallest building by building, right? But okay, so Yeah, it's exactly. So that's like the mindset, right? And so I think to me, this is the lesson then I took away. I remember going to my first workshop with Hormozi and his team, and I'm like, I have so many ideas. Like I have so, uh, I have so many ideas. Like I want to do like a VA company. I want to do help like international students. Like I just have a tons of ideas, and like maybe you guys can relate that too. Like ideas is never the issue. Like you go to sleep and you wake up with 10 more ideas. Ideas is never the issue. And what's interesting is the lesson is a focused fool can accomplish more than a distracted genius, right? And I think about this because for me, what I've realized, because I have all these conversations with fellow entrepreneurs like you guys, is our biggest strengths as entrepreneurs is that we are willing to be naive enough and have a millions ideas and willing to pursue that. But our Achilles heel is also the same, is our kryptonite as well, right? Our kryptonite is the same thing as our strength. It is that we have too many ideas, which means that we then lack prioritization. And we lack focus because there's this new shiny object syndrome that happens to us. And that's the challenge. And that's where most people get stuck, is because they're always chasing the next idea. And they never really give the attention needed to the main constraint or the main focus. So after I went to the first workshop, which is back in August yeah, August of last year, 2024, I go to Salome. If you don't know who Salo is, like what I was mentioning is like the equivalent of Layla, like operating. I was like, Salo, we need to focus. And her reply was like, this is what I've been telling you the whole time. And the reason is because Salo's not an entrepreneur. She's just very black and white and executor, right? She is the integrator and I am the visionary, right? But she could be telling me, it's the same thing with like my wife, like, babe, I've been telling you this. It takes another person to tell you that for you to realize that, right? Um, yes, exactly, Hytham. Like he is the ex, and so I then say, hey, you're always right, Salo. I needed to learn the lesson the hard way. And therefore, uh, yeah, and therefore, um, I say, fine, let's change things and focus. So, what changed in my business, right? We stopped selling the VA service. We transitioned from the mindset of we're coaches to we're consultants, right? And we stopped relying on hiring to solve our problems, right? The reality is that my team's effort were all like my this is what I told myself, right? I was like, well, I have 20 ideas. If I just hire 20 people and make them that priority, then everything works, right? And the reality is that it doesn't. It doesn't because like it's still my idea that I'm delegating it to somebody else. But if I'm not there to support them on the execution because they're just following the plan that I set, but my plan is always changing, it doesn't work as well. So we are simplifying the business, right? Like we used to sell a VA service that we no longer sell anymore. And there's a transition period that goes through that, but that's the reality. Like, um, so yeah, it's been hard lessons. We still have a one, how about over like 50 people in the job search academy. We worked with a lot of college students. And so some of them that joined our program were juniors. And so this May is the last cycle of them. So it's funny because we still have two full-time employees working with 61 clients that are getting jobs this semester on top of the VA service, right? On top of our consulting service. And so it adds complexity to a business that we're not doing $3 million in profits. We shouldn't be doing that. We should just be simplifying it. And so when I started thinking, I just got back from Vegas, I saw this guy and he's doing like $3.5 million in his coaching business. And I'm like, hey, so like, what's your funnel look like? Like, you probably have a 30 million things. Like, oh no, I just run ads. I have a sales guy and I deliver the service. Super simple. And I'm like, this guy, like, I'm happy for him. High five. And I go like, do you have a podcast? Oh no. Do you do this? No. Do you have a community? No. Just super simple. Like simplify, like don't complicate it. You don't need 20 million ideas. Like simplify the business. And it's interesting because it's super easy for me to tell, like whenever I talk to anybody, like any of my clients, I can go to Scott, I can go to Ian, I can go to Ellie, I can be like, Ellie, don't do this, just focus, focus, focus. But it's so hard for me to execute that. Right. And I think that's why we need like that's why we need a third party coach who is not emotionally attached to the decisions that we're making and can tell you the black and white, like, hey, do this, do that. Okay. So hard lesson, something I think I'm learning, but to be honest, probably a year from now, Sally could be like, yeah, we still need to focus more, right? We can still dial into it more as well. Lesson number 3, and this actually hit home a lot, but the best way to buy time is education. So when you pay for education, you're buying someone else's years of experience in hours. And what's interesting is that, and if you listen, here's what's really cool, right? When you hear Hormozi and Layla talk in person, they are the same as they are in their videos. They are authentic. Like it is, they don't have a mask on. Whatever you see online and what you see on the podcast, what it's genuinely them. It's like it's just them, right? And so they're what's interesting is, and if a lot of the things that they would say in their office, it's very similar. It's identical. Let me change it back. It is identical to what they say in their podcast. So they're not like gating and saying like, oh, that strategies for you guys who paid money, and now I'm not sharing the good stuff with. No, like what you guys are getting on the podcast is the same. It's the same. I think the difference is more personalized towards your business more than anything. I think that's what you're paying for, is the personalization of how does this advice apply to where your business is today. And we can kind of talk about how that kind of works. But and he says things like, look, there's always a price to it. You just have to decide if you were going to pay the price through time or money. But there's always a price. And I don't know if how many of you guys have listened to that new episode that he did with you
Stephen
guys know
Bartlett.
yeah. The guy who wrote The Diary of the CEO. His name is Steve Barnett.
Yeah,
Bartlett.
Bartlett.
Bartlett. Yeah.
You always have
Bartlett.
an N in there. There's no N.
Bartlett.
Bartlett. Read it
Bartlett.
on the
I
book.
am reading it. I'm dyslexic. Oh, relax. I'm dyslexic. Okay. So
You're
that
fine.
episode, Ellie, can you put the link there? Because like I would say Mari, but Mari doesn't know which episode.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I
yeah,
know
I
me
got
and you
you.
listen to it. So this episode just came out. It's 3 something hours long. It is awesome. It is so good. It was so good. And he actually goes into a little bit more details about this concept of like the education is a time machine, right? And in the most simplest terms. And I started thinking about this myself. Like I like first I try to say like how does that apply? How does this advice apply to my journey? And I remember I was telling you guys that um my first 2.5 years of business, I paid the price, just not with money. I paid it with time, right? In 2 years, 2.5 years, I made less than $100,000 in my career coaching business. And I would make excuses to myself. I was like, well, it's part of the game. It's going to take 3 years to figure it out. It's like, and I would justify why I did that. And I would justify it to my wife more than I would justify it to myself, and then tell my wife why it's not being as successful as I had originally planned, and why I gave away that corporate job that I was getting promoted every 2 years. Right. Um, and then like right before quitting, I connected with this person on LinkedIn. Her name is Emily Milianes. And if you're in LinkedIn, maybe you've talked to Emily before. Emily's an angel and she's amazing. And she's been in business for 20 years. And her dad was a serial entrepreneur. She's been in business for 20 years, but she has a lifestyle business. So like she does really well for herself. She's like always sold out, but does like she's been doing it for 20 years. She's been full-time career coach in this space for 20 years. And she's like, Daniel, you should work with this guy named Alex Kuhn. And I ended up talking to Alex. And I remember putting I think it was $12,000. That's how much his program costs into a credit card. And I think I paid $5,000 or $4,000, and then I paid the rest in payment plans, kind of like anything, right? And I remember that in the first 3 months, Alex was able to help me go from like three to $4,000 a month where I was at to like $20,000 a month. And maybe it took more than 3 months to do that, maybe, but definitely less than 6 months. All I knew is that 12 months after working with Alex, I had made $150,000 in like revenue collected after I struggled to even make 150 in 2 years, 100 in 2 years. And I think I realized is that the price is there. It's like I chose to pay it in time first, and then when I realized that I wanted to go faster, and it's like it keeps reselling myself. And if I think a lot about what I did for like for students when now helping them get jobs, is if the average college student was making like $60,000, but the average client that I work with, because we gather all this data, was making $78,000, right? I was speeding up their income by more than by years, right? Years worth of raises of them getting 3 to 5% raises, right? The different jobs, like because I remember how much my life changed when I started working at PepsiCo, and I when I graduated college, I was making like $65,000 salary, and I remember like my mom, who we immigrated from Colombia with two kids and $2,000. She was making more less than minimum wage. My mom at that time was making $24,000 a month, a year, not a month, $2,000 a month, right? And I was already making double than she was. And it goes back to his education, right? My degree allowed me to get a job at PepsiCo, which then allowed me to make a shortcut to go from one day making the same as my mom in a sense, working minimum wage job, making 7.25 an hour, to doubling my mom's more than doubling my mom's income, and it's all education. And so the question that I then started thinking about is like, yes, I'm sold. I think education, like you're right. There's always a price. Is there time and money? But then the question that I then have, and the question that you probably should be asking yourself, and if you're not already, is how do you know when you should solve it with time or when you should solve it with money? Because like at the end of the day, this is not about me saying this so that you can then potentially hire me if you're not already working with me. Like it's really not. Like I promise you on the, and this is why I said to you, this is an equation. This is a mathematical equation. And by the way, if there's any spellings here, like I literally made this yesterday and no one in my team has seen it. And so like I think I gave it to Mari like in 30 minutes ago, and so it's take it all on me. I'm dyslexic, but um, because I got super excited to want to share this with you guys, and really build it out. And it's not about me being biased about telling you guys about Omni. It's genuinely about this is a mathematical equation that you need to do yourself. And how do you do that? Well, first, I think you need to understand what is your buyback rate. And that's not an Alex Hormozi thing. That is a Dan Martell wrote a book called Buy Back Your Time. And you need to be able to understand like how much is your hour worth and how much do you want the minimum return on investment to be? That's an important thing to know. I think another thing that to know is if you do this yourself, how long would it take? And if you work with someone, how long would it take? Right. And I think that's where the math comes in, right? Like I should have hired, like if I were to go back in time, and I don't want to say that I regret the things I did. I think it's led to me where I am today, but I shouldn't have left PepsiCo without a game plan, right? In fact, I should have just hired Alex Kuhn or whoever the coach might have been when I was still at PepsiCo, where I still had income. I should have just hustled a little harder on nights and weekends, right? And I should have been able to get to a point where I was doing ten to $15,000 a month in sales, and then been able to make the move and not take 2.5 years to figure it out on myself, which I ultimately didn't. I made some progress, but the problem was that every 6 months I was changing the strategy because it wasn't working. Like it must be the strategy. It's never me. It must be the strategy. But the reality is that most strategies that you see working do work. You can get clients in your career coaching business by ads. You can get clients in your career coaching by email. You can get your clients by TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, uh, cold calling them. They all work. There's already a coach out there making 7 figures, 8 figures or more in one of those strategies. The problem is that we never stick into those strategies long enough to it to work, right? And so, all that to say, I think you just need to do the math and understand, like, okay, what would it cost, right, to work with someone to do that? And by the way, there's different variables to getting there. So here goes how it goes and what changed, right? There's three ways to solve any problem, right? And that is time or effort, time, and money. When I think about effort, is like you've been there, done that. So when I ultimately had to pivot from career coaching to business coaching, right? I've been there, done that on a lot of the components of running a business. So it took me 6 months to do what took me 6 years in the career coaching space. Like I was able to ramp up my revenue to where I was in career coaching in 6 months, even though it took me 6 years to get there. And for many of you, you might have met me when I was doing career coaching. Valerie's clapping because she was in the same Alex Kuhn class as I was. So when I was telling you about Alex, actually, there's proof. There's Valerie was in there when I was and that was like in 2019, I believe, Valerie, right? If I'm doing my math correctly. So I was effort. I've been there, done that. The second one is time. Okay, well, it's still involved. Okay, so it was 2021. You're right. Like the math is mathing. The math is mathing. Maybe it took me about 2.5 years. 2018, it took me 2.5 years to hire a coach. So 21 actually makes more sense. Um, the, so then the second thing is time. Like, look, if you like, I think a lot about like all those people on Instagram and TikTok that are just like in their 20s and they're like showing pictures of Ferraris and stuff like that. It's like they didn't have money, but you know what they did have? Some of those kids that are really successful doing that put 60, 80 hours a week. So they have time. They have time. They figure out how the algorithm worked through trial and error. I don't know if you guys know who Mr. Beast is, but I love Mr. Beast, and I think he's a really interesting case study. He actually talks about how he would spend 20 hours with his friends before he was famous, seeing YouTube videos and trying to understand why that thumbnail works and why that didn't. And he didn't have money to hire consultants, but that's what he did. He put a lot of time into it. Now there is this document that leaked, um, that leaked on the web, and let me actually even like Google it, like Mr. Beast PDF leak. Um, it like leaked. Let me see if I can. And it's a document. Anyways, I'll share with you guys. I was actually reading it. Okay, this is it. So this document, essentially, Mr. Beast is what he was doing essentially to train. Yeah. Um, and he essentially ends up talking about like everything he needs to learn. If you want to go viral on YouTube, this is probably like the whole like the Bible essentially. Like is Mr. Beast. This is an internal manual that he did to get like an SOP for his internal thing. And yeah, I'll share this link, guys, so you guys can see this. But in this document, so there's another podcast that I listen to a lot that's called "Your My First Million." Have you ever heard of that podcast? And it's this episode with Mr. Beast that just came out earlier. So I was listening to it in the gym, and they talk about how here,
વીકેન્ડ પહેલા મેં કરી હતી મારા લોન્ડ્રી એટલે અહીંયા જ બધા કપડા ઢેર પડેલા હતા તો કપડા કાઢ્યા પણ નથી મેં.
anyways, he then talks about how you should hire consultants and use consultants. And he essentially says, like, if and anytime he's going to do a video, for example, he wants to build the world's biggest. He wants to be buried underneath the ground for 7 days. He would go and call Chris Angel or go hire another magician, someone who's done it, and say, "How did you do it?" So that he doesn't have to spend years trying to figure out what he can or cannot do. And so ultimately, what I'm trying to say is that it's like you just need to figure out what is the best way to solve that, and it's one of those three things. And it goes back to hiring a coach and consultant. In a best case scenario, you have enough money to hire a full-time employee to do it in your business. In a worst case, in a middle scenario, you hire a coach or a consultant. The other option is you hire courses or books that are less personalized but still give you the same context. And then lastly, you surround yourself with people who have done it. In the same episode that I was talking about Mr. Beast, which is the same thing that Hormozi talks about, is like if you surround yourself with a bunch of people that have six packs, you will get a six pack. If you surround yourself with a bunch of successful career coaches, you will be a successful career coach. Sometimes it's common sense, but it's not common practice. It just talks about Hytham, that whenever you want to solve a problem with money, there's a whole variable from free content, free resources online to just hiring somebody full-time who's been there, done that. Right? Like if you wanted to grow a company to $1 billion as fast as possible, if you could afford hiring Elon Musk, like the odds of you succeeding is like 99.9%. Right? Now that's super obvious, but like break that down even further. Yeah, it's like hierarchy in terms of money is hiring them full-time for yourself, right? If you can afford hiring them full-time, or in that sense, give up some equity in your business to do that, right? Find a partner to do that. Second option is you hire a consultant or a coach who's been there, done that, right? And then the third is that you hire coaches, like you join the like you hire like online courses or books or things like that, right? They're all cheaper, but they're all less personalized and less support, right? If you have somebody working 40 hours a week on your business that's been there, done that, like the likelihood of success is really high. But those people are expensive, right? Yeah. So with all that being said, I'm open for questions. And then, yeah, we can kind of go from there. Which lesson, put it on the chat, hit you the hardest? And is there any questions that you guys have? I am an open book.
So I don't know if you remember this, but there was something I said at the mastermind, which was it was like, I'm really excited to go home and for all of the tidbits and conversations we have to like echo in my mind as I fly home and once I get home. And I am curious, and I bet that maybe these three lessons are the ones that are resonating for you. That's really what it is. It's just kind of those resonating lessons. Sure that these three are resonating for you, but I'm also curious, like, is there anything from like Hormozi's team, like a specific quote or a specific story or instance that's just been really standing out to you in your memory?
Yeah. Um, yeah, there's a million things. You know what's interesting is that even Hormozi copies,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I would say 80% or 90% of my experience at Hormozi's, I've seen that somewhere else. And I'll give you guys a really, really good example. It was the first night, so there was a 2-day event. The first event, we were generally all the events end up with some sort of happy hour where Hormozi's executive team is hanging out there, like their directors and VPs and stuff like that. And the director of client success came to the table where Salo and I was, and she's like, so like, is this your guys' first, like, what she had remembered me from the first time, but this is the second time. And she goes like, hey, how are you guys enjoying Vegas? And I said, great. Like Salo had gotten here. I took Salo to Vegas with me. And I said, she just got here at 11 p.m. It's her first time in Vegas. Is there any really good recommendation for dinner spot that you would recommend we go and take Salo, right? And she goes like, what type of food do you guys like? I said, Salo, you pick. She's like, I love Asian food. And she's like, well, there's this particular restaurant that's really, really good, and it's really hard to get reservations. Let me see what I could do. So she left the conversation. And she goes like, comes back like 10 minutes later, 5 minutes later. It's like, hey, I found reservations, but you would have to leave like in 15 minutes. And by the way, everyone was about to leave anyway. So we were going to leave anyways in 15 minutes. So you're like, yep, sounds good. So is this restaurant at the Wynn Hotel, which is a really nice hotel, probably one of the nicest hotels in Vegas. And I forgot the name of the restaurant, but is Miza, something like that. And it's really hard to get reservations. We're like, well, Hermosi's probably has some like, they have some pool, right? And we had dinner. And at the end, the server was like, Tiffany paid for the bill already. You guys are good to go. And well, that was like, by the way, like it was a $400 meal. We paid him $40,000. It doesn't break his margins whatsoever, but it's how it made Salo and I feel. Now, that actually comes from a book called Unreasonable Hospitality.
Oh, you beat me to it. I was typing it in the chat.
Yeah. And the next day, I went to Tiffany and I said, Tiffany, thank you so much for that. Like, you have no idea how much that made us feel. And like, when I look at the business side, like the mathematics of it, 0.01% of what we paid him, like it's nothing. It's nothing. It's nothing, nothing, nothing. But it's the autonomy and the fact that she thought about it and that she asked questions about where we wanted to go, and it just made it all really special. And we were already happy with reservations. We already thought we won because of the reservations. And so when I asked her, she's like, yeah, like we read this book and it's called Unreasonable Hospitality. And since then we've been applying it. And so like I think a takeaway was like they're also doing it. They're also doing, they're not just saying we know everything, we're God, we have all the answers. Like they're not saying that at all. And so I think that was a really big takeaway, is like they're also learning and they're also copying and they're also iterating what they're learned. So yeah. Elvie, and then I'll go to Brenda.
Thank you, Daniel. This is very insightful. If there is something that you will say that was the turning point for you to go from 6-figure to 7-figure, what that will be? There is only one thing. Maybe there are many, but I'm looking for the major deal breaker for you.
I think it's just doing more, better, and new. And those are not even my words. It's like that's actually a Hormozi word. And now that I look back at it, like I realize what was that. It's like it's all consistency in marketing and sales in the beginning. And I think the good thing for you, LV, is that you have so much top of funnel traction that you get into 7 figures is probably arguably one of the easiest thing out of everyone here for you to do, because you have the top of funnel leads. So in your scenario, when I think about this, is if you can build a scalable backend product, it's just getting enough leads through the funnel and just doubling down, and without getting cute. Like if I'm you, it's don't do ads, not yet. Just simply do all the attention that you're getting from LinkedIn and funneling down and perfect that funnel. Like just perfect that funnel without getting cute. And if you do that, like that was what happened to me. It's like we knew exactly what we needed to do on LinkedIn. We just did it over and over and over and over again. Which, if I were to say you this, if I can do 7 figures on LinkedIn, you can do multiple 7 figures, because you have like your LinkedIn is 4x mine. Yeah. Yeah. Simplify. Keep it like KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Like really is the game. Yeah. Hey, Brenda.
Hey, so my question goes back to what you mentioned about entrepreneurs being kind of flighty, like always not focusing.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually my biggest roadblock right now, that I get bored a lot.
Yeah.
And for instance, like I don't like doing resumes.
Yep.
Like this is too simple for me, or
Mhm.
something like that. So did was Moses, I can't remember his name, say anything about how to handle that, how to focus when you are innovative, or like you just move too fast?
It's the challenge. That is the hard part. But that's what matters. That's the difference. But in that scenario, it goes back to the principle of buying back your time. Like, could you hire somebody to do the resume for you? And that allows you to just do more high value tasks that you generally enjoy, right? Like, and I don't know if that's a Hormozi advice, as it is just my experience. And even like, I think Dan Martell talks a lot about that. And Dan Martell is arguably probably even the same or bigger than Hormozi. But there's some tasks that like you're gonna have to constantly do. Like at the end of the day, like I am still gonna be the face of Opni. I still got to be involved in client success. I still have to be involved in sales. Like that is not gonna go away. I'm still doing this workshops, right? But there's things that I love more than others. But if they're low value tasks and they're $1 signs, those should be delegated or automated or deleted. But there's some high value tasks that you're gonna have to do. And but I don't think by the way, resumes is not one of them. You can hire a resume writer who that it will do it for anywhere between $50 to $200 a resume.
Thank you.
Yeah. Todd, I think you had a question. We'll put the 3 lessons and like on the recap. Maybe Maddie, you can copy and paste from the presentation. Yeah. Hytham said, if you were starting over today but had your currently knowledge, what is the one move you'll make to accelerate business success faster than anything? It is the theory of constraint. It is exactly what I teach at Opni. Like for all of you who are kind of either starting out or doing less than 7 figures, I am just giving like that is the playbook. Like that's what I would do. The main thing is focus on one thing at a time, right? Because if you're trying to solve all your constraint at once, that's where you're going to struggle. And so it is first building a really great offer. Second, making sure the marketing and LinkedIn is on point, that I'm getting a lot of traction. Then are those leads turning into sales calls? Then are they converting into paying clients? Then do I have a scalable service? Like that would be the order. Yeah. Uh, yeah. So like Rajiv, that's like it took me 3 years to hire a VA. I should have done it earlier. Absolutely. Same thing for me. Alex, my coach, was the one who told me to hire a VA. That VA ended up being Salo. It completely changed my business forever. But hiring a VA becomes a mathematical equation as well. Do you have enough low value tasks to give away? And if you're working full time, like I would hire a VA before quitting my full time job. Going back in time, I would just work at PepsiCo. It's like we had this with one of our clients. I said, don't quit your part-time job yet. Hire a VA. And then that's a VA will pay for itself and more if they're doing the right task, right? It's all what they're doing. And yeah, so absolutely. Yeah, so look, Todd said they have an hourly resume. Pavi, your questions.
Yeah, I really like the lesson 2, I think, where you were saying, focus and having too many ideas. I think that has always been something that we also discussed, and it was a great reminder again. But I think I've come a long way since then, since like last year. I'm really, really focused now because of you, thanks to you. My question was actually backing up on what LV was asking. So how do we break from, 10, 20K months to like 40, 50K months? Because that's going to make a huge difference. So I was curious if Hormozi had any specific system or anything like that that would help you get to that next level when you don't have that big of a following. I think for me, that's one, like the top of funnel is definitely one of the challenges to attract, more people on LinkedIn. So yeah, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, you know what he would tell you is you should be able to do 7 figures on or more on one platform. Meaning he would tell you do LinkedIn more. He would tell you to double down on LinkedIn, do more of LinkedIn, do better of LinkedIn before going to new. And so the question it would be like the question that you should be asking yourself is like, how can there, or like, there's people who will post on LinkedIn that says, in 3 months, I've gained 100,000 followers, right? Like, like, has people seen some of those, like people who are just massively growing on LinkedIn? The question that I would have for you, Pavi, and by the way, I am going to have this, I can give you guys a little bit of a sneak peek of something, but the reason why that is there's people out there on LinkedIn who are getting massive results, especially in the last 24 months. I would be saying, how do they do it? And if that's my bottleneck, because that is your bottleneck, because if you can just get more top of funnel views, you would you have the systems already built out where everything, right? If you double your lead, you double your clients. Your system's already in place. So I'll be figuring out how to crack LinkedIn's algorithm. And people have already figured it out. So you either figure it out with with money or with time. It's up to you. And that's where the mathematical equation goes, because you would understand that. But to give you a little bit more of a sneak peek is one of the easiest, one of the things that we've noticed is that on LinkedIn it's been gamified. And these accelerators exist. Maybe some of you have been in accelerators before. Like Chris Downey has an accelerator. I think there's one called Archimedes. There's probably another couple of ones there that I'm not naming that have figured out a way to gamify LinkedIn to, yes, it doesn't replace bad content, but if you have good content and you're not in those accelerators, you're not going to grow as fast because of just the engagement that they're having with each other. And without getting too much into the weeds of here, because that's not the whole point, is it is a game that like ultimately you're gonna have to play in LinkedIn to be successful and grow faster, especially if you're a business owner first, creator second. And so to say that, Pavi, we're in the final works of building an accelerator for coaches in particular, and I'm going to partner with Adam and Reno on it to do it. But because you're part of Opni, you will get it for free. Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and yeah, you too. So like I've been kind of like sneak peeking it out, but like until the deal is finalized, like our idea is to beta test it with the clients at Opni. We just want a before and after transformation of it, and then from there we're gonna launch it to the public, and then anybody could join. But it'll be focused for coaches, and so we're very close. Like all three of us very excited. It's a big part of why I was seeing them in person, and yeah.
Awesome. A quick follow-up to that. So in when you said like, the rest of the system is built, do we still rely on the same system of having, the weekly workshops and things like that, or should we look into more automation to buy back some time?
Follow the rule of more, better, new. The reason why it's more first is a mathematical equation because you know it works, just do it more. I'm telling you, you can so just to give you the scale of how the system could work, we were generating about 200 leads for my career coaching business every month or every week. We were having 2 workshops. Each workshop had over 30 people attend. We then generated over 60 sales calls, or sorry, we had 60 people attending each workshop. We generated over 60 sales calls a week. We had 4 salespeople, all in the same system that you're following. So there's just a lot of room for scalability. So don't complicate it. No shiny object syndrome. Work on top of funnel. If you fix top of funnel, everything else will trickle down.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Cool.
Yeah. All right. One other bonus lesson that I learned from Hormozi. It actually wasn't Hormozi. It was Hormozi's director of strategy. I said, "Hey, and I want to lower your hand, like, on. One of the things I was like, hey, my constraint is I have a lot of top of funnel leads from career coaches, and I have this awesome school community, but I'm not converting of those people into sales calls. And you know what he said? He goes, Daniel, you got to be more aggressive about pitching. So I know half of you here are probably like already clients, but for the ones that are not, guys, this is a 4-minute pitch on more than anything. Is if you like this presentation, then you will love the Career Coaches Accelerator. So I'm shamefully gonna plug it in, even though I know some of my clients are here, and you guys obviously are big fans of Opni. I think even so, I appreciate you guys giving us some really high Net Promoter scores. Proof over promises. I decided to make this even funner, and this is what the average client does. What you're going to learn from Opni is the theory of constraints. We've been there, done that. We are very good at teaching other coaches how to build and scale their businesses. See, Ellie does love Opni. I just literally quoted things that people have said. And if there's no room, Pavi does too. And yeah, so look, thank you guys, all the customers who are literally giving me social proof as we speak. So I appreciate you guys so much. All that to say, if you're not currently an Opni client and you want to talk about what that looks like, we will share a link on the group chat or on the chat, and you can schedule a call to speak with me directly to talk more about where you are in your business, where you are today, where you want to be tomorrow, what is the gap, and I can explain on how we can do this. So I don't want to take too much time from you guys because we do have office hours for our clients in 5 minutes. So if you guys are sticking around for office hours, but that is my pitch. It is a soft pitch. I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation. And I appreciate you guys for just being part of the community anyway. So guys, thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Daniel. That was great.
Yep. And now office hours are officially here. So stick around for office hours. Yeah. See, so you guys like the new style with the cartoon?